Okay, gang, let's tackle Unit 4, Day 2. You'll remember that I asked you guys to fold a 2x4 in class. Well, I'm going to ask you guys also, on that 2x4 that's landscape, to go ahead and either fold or draw a line that cuts that top row into 2 equal parts. And we're going to take our notes up here in this top half, okay? Let's start in that top corner right there. And I want to discuss first a little bit of the difference between simp and C when you guys are solving your equations, because we're going to end up doing that again in this unit as well. Okay, so let's start with simp. I write simp when solving an equation doing a couple of things. Here's an example of one. If during the process there, I end up collecting like terms, that is an example of simplification. So there's one. Another example that we have is if I do 5 times 3x minus 4, something that requires distributive property. Okay, that is another example of simplification. Here's the key. Notice that both of these guys occur on one side of the equation. If something happens like collecting like terms or distributive property on one side of the equation, that is an example of simp. Okay? Let's talk about an example of C. If you guys are wondering where we're at on our notes, we are going to be right here. Okay? Let's talk about C, or collecting. Collecting occurs when you have variables on both sides of the equation. So something like this. So if I was to subtract a 2x from both sides here, that step right there is the collecting. Okay. Notice that that happens on both sides of the equation. So in your notes here, write down the word both. That should help you tell the difference between those two. Okay, let's go to our second column up here in that top little spot, and let's copy down this problem here. Negative 2x plus 4 is less than 12. Now I'm going to solve this inequality, and I want to show you guys that it's very, very similar to solving an equation. There's just one little wrinkle. Okay. Notice that both sides are already simplified. I don't have the need to collect variables, so I'm just going to solve here. Okay, so let's see how we do. Subtract 4 from both sides. I end up with negative 2x is less than 8. You'll have to apologize, my board is doing some funny things. Now, I'm going to have to divide away that negative 2. Now, right here, when I'm dividing away that negative 2, that's when the inequalities are a little bit different. When solving an inequality, if you multiply or divide by a negative, then you've got to flip the inequality. And the way I want you guys to remember that is by circling that inequality. So during the solving process, if you ever multiply or divide by a negative, I want you to circle that inequality, which says you're going to end up flipping that inequality. Okay? So here's our answer. X is greater than negative 4. Now, a couple of you guys are going, whoa, time out. Why are we flipping that inequality? What does that have to do with anything? Well, I'm going to show you that it maintains the truth of the original inequality. Let me show you. Right now, X is greater than negative 4. So that means that X could be any number that satisfies that inequality. So, for instance, I could choose 0. Now, if I go back to the original inequality, by the way, you do not have to do this. Just watch me. Let's say I plug that 0 in there. If 0 is an answer, then it should end up giving me a true statement. Okay, so this is 0 plus 4. 4 is less than 12. Well, that is true. That proves that 0 is a solution to the original inequality. Okay, however, let's say that we didn't flip that inequality. And let's say that instead of x is greater than negative 4, it has x is less than negative 4. Okay, well then a solution might be negative 5. Well, let's plug that into the original inequality, and let's see if that actually does hold up. Let's see, that's positive 10 plus 4. That ends up being 14 is less than 12. Well, that is a false statement. What that's telling us is that negative 5 is not a part of the solution set. So by flipping that inequality, we help maintain the truthfulness of that original inequality. Let's begin to find the values of x here. Okay, so vertical line. We are not simplifying, but we do have to collect variables here. So there's a c. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3x from both sides. That way I end up with a positive coefficient. Okay, so let's see. That's going to be 2x minus 2 is greater than or equal to 4. Now I can begin to solve. Okay, so I will subtract 2 from both sides. Gives me 2x is greater than or equal to, sorry, I need to add 2 from each side. Oopsie. That's going to be 6. Now notice, as I divide away this 2, what I'm dividing by is not a negative. I'm dividing away a positive number. So that means I am not going to flip the inequality. The only time I'll flip the inequality is if I multiply or divide by a negative number during that solving process. So x should be greater than or equal to 3. Okay? Well, down here in the bottom part of that column, let's copy down the very same problem. And let's say I solve it a little bit different way. Okay, so very same problem. And let's say I tackle it a slightly different way. Okay, so we still need to collect. Instead of subtracting 3x this time from both sides, let's say that I subtract 5x from both sides. Now, we all know that this shouldn't matter. But with the inequality in the middle, it might get a little sticky. Okay? Well, now it's time to solve. Okay. Right here in this process, I've got to divide away a negative 2. Now, when that happens, I want an alarm to go off in your head, and I want you to realize, hey, I'm dividing by a negative. That means I should have to flip my inequality. Now, notice, when we do that, and we flip it, we're going to end up with the same exact answer that we got in the problem above. So you can see by flipping that inequality, when you multiply or divide by a negative, it helps maintain that truthfulness of the original inequality. Okay, now we're in that last column up there on the top. I want you to copy down this you try here, and I want you to try it on your own. Okay, here in a second, I will give you a little bit of feedback. Go for it. Okay. I am going to need to simplify. Okay. And then I'm going to need to solve. Not going to have to collect anything on this one. Now notice, I'm dividing by a negative 8. Alarms are going off. Red flags are going off. I'm saying, okay, I've got to have to flip that inequality. And when I do, I'm going to get x is less than negative 4. Okay? Last little bit there. Try this guy. Okay, let's see how we did. I'm going to have to simp. Okay. Then I'm going to have to collect, because I have variables on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 8x from both sides. It gives me a positive coefficient. And then later on, I'm not going to have to worry about flipping the inequality. Okay, now I'm going to solve. Notice that I'm dividing by a positive 4, which means I'm going to keep the inequality going the same way. And x is less than or equal to 12. Okay, I hope you guys are ready to go on Monday or Tuesday when I see you. I was asked to give a shout out to 7th period because of their affinity for squirrels. So, way to go, guys.